It's time for Small Town Times.
I mean, it was just a decision of council. It wasn't, right or wrong.
So smoke and mirrors.
Welcome to Small Town Times. My name's Dave Dale. I'm the editor. Today's guest is Dave Mendicino, former North Bay City Councillor. We talk about the budget, the process, some of the big projects, some landmines to watch out for, and a little bit of critique of what people are doing. Hope you enjoy it.
The first order of business for me after the election was just to chill out and digest everything that happened and just let it go. And I actually did tune into the budget discussion last night, so I found that very, very interesting.
Have you been paying attention to any of the news coverage, the scant that there is?
Here and there, a little bit. I mean, I've been keeping tabs in. I mean, I pretty well watched this whole budget process to a certain extent, but it was tough to stay away, but I needed to stay away a little bit. And I think here we go. Here we are today.
Well, that's great. So what do you think of the budget as far as what they passed last night?
Well, I mean, considering they started at 6 point something, I mean, I think overall, they ended up at 3.23. I think that given the challenges that not just this council has, but every council has had every year, especially with rising inflation, I think they did overall a pretty good job. I'm a little concerned about the amount of reserves that they did allocate to keep that tax increase lower. That's overall, I'm pleased with it. I think I could tell the amount of hard work that went into it, not just by council, but by staff.
Well, how much reserves did they soak up in this one to keep the tax?
Well, they used approximately $825,000 in reserves to balance the water and sewer budget, and approximately $875,000 to balance the overall operating budget. And they also used some reserves there's a 1% bump up in capital every year that's built into the current policy. They used reserves to handle half of that. So 0.5% went towards the bump up in the capital budget. And the bump up is there. I mean, you need a bump up in your capital budget, not just to keep up to the capital projects, but to keep up to inflation and that. So, overall, a little over $2 million that they're going to be, this coming year, they're going to be challenged to find those savings in the operating budget. And if they don't, in January 2024, they're going to be behind the eight ball. So,
what's the most you guys ever used in reserves? You guys is when you were on.
Yeah, when I was on. It's common. You could use $200,000, $350,000, $400,000. But when I'm sitting there, if I see that, when the CFO would present that, I'd want to see how you're gonna wean yourself off that amount. And sometimes it takes 2 years to wean yourself off a few $100,000. But when you're talking about $2 million. I know they're doing the operational review, and I think that's a good thing. But are they going to find those kinds of savings? Time will tell. The one that really concerns me is DSAB. They used approximately $1.6 million to balance the operating budget in order to keep the municipal levy lower. And at a time when you're dealing with homelessness, you're dealing with social services, you're dealing with mental health and addiction issues. It's not uncommon in North Bay. Northern Ontario, those issues are front and center. But when you're dealing with those issues, how are they going to find $1.6 million in DSAB budget to balance before next year they have to, worry about next year's increases? So,
was it fair to question that the amount of reserves that are out there, seems like a lot of money that's been taken that wasn't needed to be taken previously on previous tax bills?
Well, again, that's there was no appetite with this council to look at user fees. You know, a lot of times, you know, that's you do look at that, and if there was an increase in user fees, you know, you wouldn't have had to use as many reserves. I mean, it was just a decision of council. It wasn't, you know, right or wrong.
So smoke and mirrors.
Again, it's a decision they made, and
Rob and Peter yesterday to pay Paul tomorrow, maybe.
Well, I think what they're banking on is, and this is where I hope they don't bank. They start realizing as this year goes on, they're banking on finding, you know, that money in the operational review, and they might. And not saying that there's not going to be any changes here and there, but you know, for the most part, you know what, we hire the staff there for the most part, they're excellent. Okay, we pay them good money to provide the expertise that they provide, and you know, when you know, I heard last night talking about a hiring freeze. Well, you know what? For the most part, a lot of you know, that's an ongoing thing. I don't think anywhere at City Hall in the past where a senior executive is going to, before they fill a position, if they're not going to look at the structure and see if they can better achieve what they want to achieve. Maybe there is a way of saving money. So that mentality is built in to a certain extent already. Again, I'm not going to say the operational review isn't going to find something, but are they going to find upwards of $2 million? That's tough. I mean, they may be in January 2024, the 2024 budget, where they're looking at, they have to wean themselves off whatever the savings they haven't been able to find. Plus, what's the inflation going to be like next year? 4%, 5%. Hopefully it comes down. But they
set up a challenge for themselves.
A big challenge for themselves, and that's fine. You know,
I think he said there's like 14, and most of them, like, there are 14 people that are retiring. And he's thinking, or I think this was Jamie Lowry's suggestion, or who was it?
That was Jamie, who suggested the councillor Lowry that suggested the hiring freeze. And
okay, so 14 knowledge keepers leaving. Some would say people that are beyond their best before date, but that's a lot of knowledge. I know that the ONR, when they needed to get rid of all the high paid and early retirement was an option for a lot of them, they lost a lot of value. They had asset, their institutional knowledge. So they're going into this challenge with a little bit less knowledge. If that's 14 more people are retiring this year.
Well, 14 more people. And again, my past experience has been, I'm not saying it's done for every single position, but senior management does look at those people that are retiring and what they did and the knowledge that they bring to the table. And how can we do it a different way? It's not, like, to me, that was a culture that was kind of there already.
Well, I know that there's a lot of pressure to gap replacements, and that means save that salary for at least 6 months of the year so you have a little cushion.
Again, that happens already.
Yeah, but that just puts, from my experience, is that a lot of times that will put more pressure and stress, and you're trying to patch in it while you're gapping it, right? So it's a lot of challenges when you try to save money that way.
Extremely, and you know, I don't foresee any operational review that's going to go in there and blow things up. I just don't see that. That would be a mess, in my opinion, if they go that far. But you know, will they find some things here and there that suggestions or whatever? Absolutely. And then those suggestions, the staff are going to, take that all in, and then they're going to bring it to council. And then council's going to have to, it'll be interesting to see if they have an appetite to do some of the things that are being suggested. Like, you know, how extreme do you want to get?
Whatever happened to the casino money? I heard they were there was a suggestion they'd like to spend it in a way other than, I thought it was going to be for social service type stuff to help mitigate the impacts of gambling and other vice sort of oriented addiction stuff in town. How did they end up spending? I think it was like $850,000 or something.
No, it was over $1 million.
Over $1 million.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
And
yeah.
$1 million, the CFO recommended that $1 million dollars of that reserve go towards the community recreation center to lower the
Oh,
borrowing
yeah, yeah.
from 9 to 8. And I didn't see anybody say no unless I missed it. So that's where it's going. There is still money in.
The tender isn't even out yet.
What's that?
The tender isn't even out yet.
The tender is still not out yet.
Wow.
I don't think it's out. I mean,
No, it's not out yet.
so, it's
In your experience for construction in that industry, when they don't get to see the tender till April, do you get any benefit as far as the seasonal aspect of the construction? Or I thought you guys always wanted to pass your capital early so you can get those tenders out before February.
well, under normal. I mean, normally we do. The budget is passed by December 31st, early January. Everything's done
For that reason.
for that reason. But I think you've got a new council, and I think rightly so. Some of them
I'm
wanted
not
to.
saying right or wrong. I'm just saying the impacts of delaying a tender. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, they needed, some of them needed that time to bring themselves up to speed with the community recreation center project. That project has been 11 years in the making, and I'm okay. Some of them needed to be brought up to speed with that. And
What would your
fine.
upset limit be as far as the tenders go? What do you think in this environment for building and whatnot?
What was the what was the budget set? 51.6.
52.
52 million dollars. That's where it needs to come in at.
Yeah.
52 million. And
Some people are thinking it's going to be 70.
sorry,
Some people are thinking 70.
if it's 70, it's not going to happen, right?
That would be your upset. 52 is your upset.
52 million. And some of this chatter that's going on about, what's council's appetite, how much more are you willing to spend? That is so premature. I don't even know why that discussion is being held. The number is 52 million. And
When you start talking about upset limits, like if people are saying 60, 65, that's kind of where the tender is going to come in, right?
52 million is where I'm very optimistic that it's going to come in at.
Oh, yeah?
Well, I mean, you
It
know what?
should.
So you're looking at, I know the amount of work that's gone into getting it to this stage by, John Severino and his team. They've got so much invested into this project, and it's been so well thought out. And
I still don't like the design. I'm not sure how well thought out
you know
it
what?
was.
If you wait to please everybody, you're never going to get anything done on a big project like that. And I understand some people.
I would say the design doesn't please hardly anybody.
Well, I personally, I don't.
So they'll all be equally unimpressed.
Well, again,
I'm just
you're
bugging
never
you.
going
I'm
to
just bugging
please
you.
everybody, right? I think it's
I hate hearing that, though, by the way. You're never going to hear that.
you know what? It's time. If that comes in at 52 million, they need to, they need to go ahead with it.
Go ahead.
It's.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I already lost my appetite for barking too much up that tree because it ain't going to get done at all if it doesn't get done.
Well,
At
that's
52, 55, whatever it comes in at. It's not going to get done.
Well, again, it's been 11 years in the making. And when we did the multi-use recreational facility study in 2012, the consultant gave us a 15-year time horizon, 10 to 15-year time horizon on replacing West Ferris Arena and Double Rink, or as you like to call it, Double Stinks.
Yeah, double stinks.
And that was in 2012. We're in 2020. We're 11 years into that timeline, and we haven't even got shovel in the ground to replace West Ferris Arena. Like, this council is on a pretty tight string with this project because every August for the last 3 or 4 years, we have to get West Ferris Arena recertified to use. It's literally on its last legs. One of these years, an engineer will not be able to certify that arena. And
What's the real problem with that arena? Is it the foundation on the corner?
I think it's
What is it?
Foundation. I think it's you're using wood.
Yeah, you just got to shovel off the roof, though.
Well, I mean,
Could be make work project.
to me,
for
it's
some
more
homeless people.
From my understanding, it's more the the foundation, and I mean, you could see some cracks in the wall, for God's sakes. I mean,
I know. I work not down the street from it. It's funny. I was doing my spring 2023 edition of the magazine Back in the Bay, which is apolitical. I don't bring in these controversies. It's more of a feel-good nostalgia magazine. But I was doing a special section on West Fairs. And how do you not do a special section on West Fairs and talk about there's no certain plan right now still after 11 years of discussing it, of replacing what was and is a heartbeat of the community down there, right? And, putting it way over at the other end of the community so not one person lives near it, it's hard for me to leave out. But I didn't put any of that into the magazine. It's all good stuff. There's a lot of good things about fairs, but yeah, gotta get this thing done.
At the end of the day, how long is it going to take you from anywhere in the city to get to Omichelle?
Hey, listen, I was coaching baseball, and when they moved it over to the Omichelle, I had to pick up the kids because the parents couldn't get all the way to that end of town from work at 4:30 to make it to practice. All right, so I've had this discussion with a lot of people that haven't coached kids in this town, and you ended up having to bring them out there because they can't make the bus exchanges either in time, right? So.
Yet it's the way it's being used right now.
It's still a stone in my shoe.
Yeah, well, I don't want to make it a big hole or anything like that, but
I know, okay, so I'm okay with it. Just get it done. Just do something.
Just do it.
Have you heard of any plans for what to do with the community, the West Ferris Arena after the other one gets built at Omichelle, if it gets built?
The past council did not go down that road, but here again, you've got a pretty nice asset there. You've got tennis courts there, pickleball courts. You've got baseball, soccer fields there.
It's used a lot.
Yeah, but so what do you want to do with if you tear down the building, which in my opinion does need to be torn down? What do you do with it? Well, nothing money. You got to come up with the money for it. And to me, it would be a community neighborhood consultation process. What do you do? Just as there was...
I was going through the old 2005, 6, or 7 when you guys had this up for sale. You're going to remember the neighborhood you're going to grow there?
I remember it very, very well.
You can't forget, eh?
No, I remember it very, very well.
I found some of those old columns, the news stories about, let's put this whole thing on hold here.
Yeah.
Let's think about this.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they could pump up in one of those inflatable sports practice things, the cheapest thing you can do for a facility. Yeah. Maybe there's something that could be done there.
Absolutely. There should be something. It is you're right. It's central. Let's face it, that was there before North Bay amalgamated with West Ferris. It's a central core of, man, I remember going to playing hockey there when I was a kid in the 70s, and that place was jammed. I mean, with the noise, I'll never forget the noise it used to make when that little arena's full.
Shaking from the rafters for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool.
So,
well, which, we covered a bit about the budget. We covered a little bit about the community center situation. I hear Castle Home project is not off it's got some problems financially, no?
Well, I mean, you and I have talked about this before, even way before the election. The financial problems were there before the project was awarded. Starting from the very, very beginning when they wanted us to take on the $65 million guarantee from the province. And there was no way municipal politician, I didn't talk to any municipal politician at the time that agreed with that. We all agreed it needed to be built. Actually, the only two municipal politicians were the two on North Bay City Council who were board members of Castle Home, that were steadfast with the CAO. We're moving ahead, and we're going to bulldoze it and jam it down their throats, the municipality's throats. And that didn't go over very well, as we've seen.
Are you trying to tell me it might go over $121 million?
Well, all I know is the contingency fund is at $4.2 million, and they're approaching almost $1 million in using that contingency fund already, and they're not even out of the ground yet.
Wow.
So there's always been concern about the final cost because, of the way the process they went through to tender the project. How do you not create a competitive environment when you're tendering that kind of project? There was only one bidder. And we'll see. But my one comfort that I do have is the individual that's overseeing the project, Dave Smith. He's, A1. He oversaw the build of the hospital. He knows what he's doing. But I wonder if even he's been handed something that is just going to go out of control. And
Well, there is that issue
cost-wise.
about the, it started just after they offered a lower interest rate, right? What's that? Explain that one to me.
Well, you mean the recent motion by City Council to
Yeah.
ask $35 million? So here again, they've come to realize now that there's going to be $35 million more in interest costs over 25 years when this project is not just underway, but when it's done.
Wow. 35 million or 25?
35 million.
Wow. Yeah.
So again, from a financial standpoint, how do you make that kind of, I know interest rates were going up. Everyone could see they were going up. Yes, we didn't foresee them going this high, but how do you make a $35 million mistake like that?
Was that a mistake or that this project just happened to start before Infrastructure Ontario was offering a better rate for projects or something like that?
Well, I think maybe both at the same time. I mean, the rates have been rising over the last year.
Yeah.
So again, but
Maybe they're caught into a rate that's, I wonder if they're on a floating rate.
I don't know. I think
they're not on a floating rate.
they would probably be on a floating rate, right?
Of some sort.
Of some sort. Yeah. But I mean, just is the province going to bail Castleholm out again? I mean, how many times?
All they have to do is move the date over. It's a ledger removal.
Well, maybe, but
Vic has to have the right friends for that to happen.
I mean, again, is the province or MPP going to bail Castleholm out again? I mean, how many times did they come to the table when it went from 60 to 90 to 120 million, and then taking the 65?
And the last one was kind of embarrassing. Everybody got their way, but probably cost some political capital, right?
Well, yeah,
that's what you're talking about.
But again, the biggest thing we were fighting to get that provincial guarantee for the city of North Bay. It meant $65 million on our books, on our books. And what it does when you don't own the asset, what it does is just on top of the $50 million we were borrowing as our contribution. So we fought hard to get that off the table, and our MPP fought hard to get that off the table. And while we're talking to our MPP and, he's doing what he can do behind the scenes to take it off the table, you've got the board at the time just push. And I think when you say everyone got what they want, I think the other 8 municipalities still have not gotten what they want because they want out of Castleholm. Mm-hmm. And they got to figure out a way to get that done because I'd hate to be one of those smaller municipalities down the line, and they see the final number. I mean, to me, it would be, I don't know.
It's a scary number.
I'm hopeful that the end number ends up being 121 million, but I just look at where they're at with the contingency fund. They're 900,000 in already on $4.2 million, and it's a 5-year project. So. If I'm sitting on council right now, I would be more focused on that project than I would be on the community recreation center because
bigger impact,
and that's just me having a comfort level knowing what's gone into the planning of putting that community recreation center to a point where we can tender it. And let's not forget. I mean, for circumstances, we were ready to tender that project well over a year and a half ago. But we put it on pause in order to deal with the Castleholm thing because we didn't want to commit to the community recreation center until we knew where everything landed with
because it's a secondary priority.
Yeah. We made it. Well, it was a secondary. Castle Home was always the first priority of the last council. The second one was community recreation center. The third was a downtown.
I guess the first
reconstruction.
priority was not to put the city in that much of a debt situation, liabilities.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and that last council in 2019 developed a financial plan to come up with our $50 million, which we all knew that the project needed. We all supported the project. It was the $65 million that they wanted us to guarantee that really tipped the scales. And think about putting $105 million on your books. You don't own the asset. What it does to your they really got to look at the fact of whether they take it over as a municipal home.
And that brings up the topic of Castle Arms.
Castle Arms,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, interesting point there. Have you seen any progress as far as figuring that one out? As far as
I haven't seen any progress. My understanding is they're working on it, but
Peter said he's going to take care of it. So
I think this city council is working on it. I think it's on the radar of other the outlying municipalities, some of them anyway. Mm-hmm. How can it not be when they realize that the control that the municipalities had, the financial control that 9 municipalities had over $25 to $30 million in assets has been taken away, and no consultation, no, and they did it at a time when the other 8 municipalities weren't even being represented on the Castle Arms board, because they did it at a time when all these resignations were happening. If you recall, all these people are leaving the board.
yeah, it still smells a little slick.
Well, I think, at the end of the day, I hope they can they need to figure out a way to walk that decision back. Mm-hmm. But, if you look, at how they did it and, when they did it, they're saying these changes, the province needed, was making it mandatory that these changes be implemented so that Castle Arms and boards like Castle Arms and Castle Home weren't represented by the same people. And they had 3 years to implement that. And some of us, I still haven't found the legislation that's changed to say it needs to happen. So that whole thing needs to be looked at.
A little bird told me that it was done because there was noise being made when Al was gathering the mayors together on the topic of that asset potentially could be sold. Had you heard anything like that?
Again, when the mayors got together in the summer of 2021 to figure out how they were going to do this, rebuild Castle Home, mm-hmm. More on our term, the municipality's terms, a little favorable. You got to give all those mayors credit that how they fought for that, and the councils. So when they came together and they were having discussions on, everyone settled on the city of North Bay was going to do a fulsome investigation on taking that home over.
Yeah.
And off the face, it makes a lot of sense. You get $120 million asset to balance all the money that you're borrowing to build it. So North Bay was going to look at taking it over. That's why the other 8 municipalities and North Bay signed on to Infrastructure Ontario to do the rebuild. Mm-hmm. But in those discussions, Castle Arms definitely came up because it was all part and parcel.
Yeah,
it's all one. And up until we found out the time that they had that power had been taken away by the Castle Arms board at the time, it was looked at as one thing. And was it mentioned? Hey, could we sell Castle Arms, put it on the open market, and put those what we get towards the build? I'm sure those discussions, that discussion was had. I wasn't in those meetings because it was the mayors and the CAOs, but I'm sure those discussions were had. Why wouldn't they? I mean, you're trying to minimize, as much as it's a much needed and it's a number one priority project of the last council, you're trying to minimize the burden on the taxpayer, the financial burden. And that's all the municipal councils were doing at the time, was fighting for the best deal for their respective taxpayer. And it was so frustrating to see how the board and the CAO at the time handled all that.
Hey, have you heard anybody applying for the city CAO job?
No, I haven't. I was, I know John Severino. He's taken to that job very, very well. He's jumped in with both feet. I mean, and you got to figure that the transition, he's been around there a long time, so he knows the ins and outs, but looks like he's doing a pretty good job right now. And as far as other candidates, I haven't heard of any other candidates, so we'll see.
I'll just let it there.